recording, and I am so glad to welcome you all to our speaker series this evening. We have a um, three special guests, one of which is Elizabeth Robertson, who will be moderating the presentation. She is a activist and a writer, and we are so glad to have the three of you on tonight. Elizabeth is going to do the introduction and explain a little bit about the evening's expectations or plan.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. First, I'd like to just introduce our two guests tonight, Ben Becote and Camilla Thompson. Ben is a teacher in high school for Waterville Valley Academy. He teaches humanities. He's also the father of three in the Plymouth Area Network to help end racism, aka New Hampshire Panther. Camilla Thompson is the Youth Outreach Director with Black Lives Matter Seacoast chapter, which serves the seacoast of not only New Hampshire, but also Maine and Massachusetts, I believe.
Yeah.
She is also the core advocate at the YWCA in Manchester, New Hampshire, and she is also pursuing a degree in human services with a concentration in children and family. New Hampshire is her lifelong home, and she's the mother of two boys, making her determined to change the experience for Black youth along the seacoast. Thank you both. Tonight we're going to have a discussion with these two activists. I'm going to provide some discussion prompts, but hopefully we'll have a sort of free-flowing dialogue. And we'll jump right into that. But first I'm going to just do a quick land acknowledgement. And I'd like to thank the Indigenous New Hampshire Collaborative Collective for the language that they provided. This event takes place in so-called New Hampshire, but this land, or Indakina, is the traditional ancestral homeland of the Abenaki, Pennacook, and Wabanaki peoples, past and present. To my west flow the waters of the Pemigewasset. I remind us that some of these peoples are currently lacking federal recognition. I remind us that Indakina continues to be unceded territory. I invite us all to acknowledge and honor with gratitude the land, the waterways, and the Alnabak people who have stewarded Indakina throughout the generations. Thank you. Okay, to begin, I just like to get acquainted with you two and get everyone in our audience acquainted with you and your work. So I'm going to ask a question and give you both a chance to respond. And let's start with you, Camilla. Can you talk about how you got involved in the activism you're doing right now?
Yeah. So, like you mentioned, I grew up on the seacoast. So I grew up in Exeter, New Hampshire. I was primarily probably the only Black student in my class. Probably the only Black student from the first grade, oh gosh, probably until like the sixth grade. And then in the sixth grade, I think maybe with all the schools that emerge or merge together here, there was probably three of us, maybe. But I luckily lived on the campus of Phillips Exeter Academy. So I was able to see, Black people and students that looked like me. But I realized there were a lot of different experiences that I had that my white counterparts didn't have. And I think that because I was like a minor, I just kind of brushed those things off because, racism happens, but when you're the only Black person, you can't really say a lot, and especially if you're a kid. So I think that I experienced a lot of stuff that I didn't understand until I was an adult. And I realized I guess shortly after I had my first son, that I really didn't want him to grow up in a world that was happening, I guess, so to speak. Right before I got pregnant with my son, the riots in Ferguson happened. And I remember like praying that I didn't have a boy because I didn't want to raise him in today's world. I mean, it was just crazy. And I had a boy, and I felt compelled to make his life a little bit different. And then I had my second son last October of 2019, and then George Floyd happened this summer. So I just felt like it was time for me to do something to stop being silent in my community, because my family is very well known here. And it was time for me to kind of take that torch and start, because my son starts public school next year. And I want him to be seen for the bright, funny, smart little boy that he is, instead of like this target. Because you don't know when they go from cute and sweet to, harmful. So it was a lot of just growing up here and becoming a parent and just figuring out like I just kind of needed to step out of my comfort zone and start doing something.
Camilla, my experience is a lot like yours. It was sadly watching the events happen after George Floyd was killed that ignited the spark in my activism as well. I'm a father, and because of watching particularly the youth here in Plymouth, my son and some of the others of his friends were actually the ones who first um, were holding up signs and standing up in the common in Plymouth, New Hampshire. And it was him who invited me to join him. So I was inspired by the youth and by trying to make a better tomorrow for those little guys,
Yeah.
just like yourself, and um, I also have come May, it'll be 20 years that I've spent in New Hampshire as an adult. And my experience with race is a lot like yours, of being, the only Black person in the room, or the only Black person at your work, or the only Black person in the classroom. And I hang around here, so when there are the other Black youth that I interact with, they'll get to see someone in a positive light.
Yeah.
So often we're maligned and presented in a negative framework. So I think it's really powerful to counteract that movement with some positivity and positive examples, role models for our youth, especially.
Yeah, I think that all the protests that happened this summer after George Floyd was killed was amazing. At the time, I kind of almost shunning people because I was kind of like, this is kind of a slap in the face. Like, this is not the first one that died. This happens all the time. We've been saying this, and now because you got a good camera angle, now y'all want to jump on the boat, and now y'all want to protest. And so I didn't watch the video. I wasn't a part of this. I remember it playing on CNN, and me and my dad changed it immediately, and we were like, we just can't see another Black person, die. It's like whatever. And I was like, how long are white folks going to protest? Like, this has to be done, in a day or so. And then it didn't stop. And then it kept going. And I was like, all right, well, I want y'all to keep that same energy when it happens 2 weeks from now. And then it just kept happening. And I was like, okay. And I still had not watched the video. So it probably had been like 3 weeks at this point. And I read an article where somebody said that this man called out for his mother in his last moments, his mother that had already passed. And at that point, I was like, okay, let me watch this video. Because this man called out for this woman that gave him life in the last moments of his life. I mean, and if a police officer took the life of my boys because he was brown or for something silly, I mean, I would be protesting and raging too. So I watched this video and I immediately looked up the next protest or the next peaceful marches that were happening. And because it was so big, I know that this is going to be in history books eventually. So I gathered my niece, who was 2 at the time, and my infant and my then 4-year-old, and we went and we protested in Portsmouth, because, and I took pictures because I wanted them to be a part of this movement. I know that they don't understand it, but they needed to be a part of it, and I needed to do something to try to give back, because I can't even imagine. And I began being thankful for the people that were protesting and the youth. There were so many youth out, so many teenagers. It was just incredible. And I began just kind of posting on Facebook that, like, their voices are what's going to lead this way. Like, they, and I think they're wiser than we were. And so I began really jumping into Black Lives Matter Seacoast and figuring out how I can connect these kids and just kind of keep this going, because this is not something that's going to stop today, tomorrow, or last week. I mean, I give it 6 months before we have another video that's out here. But it's about when there's some type of justice, right? Because that's the end result. There's never justice. Everyone always gets off. So when do Black Lives matter?
Thank you both. It sounds like you have a lot of support and interest from the youth in your life. Would you say that you are encountering support in general, or are you finding that doing this work is causing friction in your life, Ben?
So,
Oh, yeah, go ahead, please.
first, I'll talk about like my personal life, and then I'll go to my professional life.
Yeah.
In my personal life, it's been great. As it's kind of a weird place to step out onto the public scene and try to do this work as an activist. And it's a weird place to find yourself walking into. But in my private life, I've had some great role models. I have some great support systems and networks personally, who are really excited to see um, the possibility of change happening, and are proud to have someone that they can champion, who is fighting for that change. So I am really grateful to all of the support networks that's out there, particularly my family and my personal networks of friends. Um, and then on the professional side, so it started out as a slow grind, trying to kind of pull my work and my professional colleagues along with me into this work. And it started with some kind of uncomfortable appeals where I felt like I had to really bare my soul to be acknowledged that the situation in the world was causing me particularly pain. Um, but as time has passed, as the summer faded into the fall, into the winter, the professional network has slowly gotten behind me and galvanized and helped to support this work. I don't know about you, Camilla, but was your work supportive also of your activism? Because I felt for the longest time that I had to wear two hats, where I was teacher Ben on one side and then I was activist Ben, and I would take off my cloak in the closet in between classes or something.
Yeah, it's really funny. I was working at a mental health center um, up until November. And I remember um, shortly after the George Floyd killing, I had a client and I was sitting with them and we were doing paperwork. And she looked at me and she said, "Do you feel like you've been treated better or worse since the riots have taken place?" And I looked at her for a little while. And I'm a very open person. I don't hold anything back. That's probably my problem. But I looked at her and I remembered that, these questions come up, they've happened all my life. So I wasn't offended. And I said, honestly, I don't think that anything changed, but I also don't think that I was looking for a change, right? I noticed people on Facebook that, previously had told me that, Michael Brown was a thug, or, Trayvon Martin deserved, whatever they were justifying. I noticed that they began posting positive things. And at work, I remember being quiet for a couple of days, just quiet. I remember seeing all of these other organizations posting that they stood in solidarity. I mean, even PlayStation was posting solidarity for Black Lives Matter, the NBA. And I emailed the CEO of the mental health center, and I had said, are we going to post anything like this? I mean, I know that I am only one of two people at this organization, but I think that something powerful is really happening. And I think that if we're going to be with the times, or we're going to stay up in this community, especially being in Portsmouth, I think something needs to be said, because I began getting calls that people were having a hard time, whether they were positive or negative about the protests. And they wrote up something small and like posted it on their website. Again, wasn't expecting a lot. But so work life was iffy. Personal life, I mean, I come from a Black family, so there was, support there. But I noticed my white friends, which are the majority of my friends, didn't know how to express their solidarity or how to help. We had Blackout Tuesday. They didn't feel comfortable doing Blackout Tuesday. So like some of them would like donate to a cause and like screenshot it to me. And I'd be like, don't show me that you're doing that. Like, I don't need to do, like, I'm still going to be your friend, but like, don't do that. Cause I feel like that was almost insulting too. So it's hard to see what kind of support and what you don't, because growing up in a predominantly white town and not having support all the other years, it was kind of like, well, why now? Like, why do you care now? And why do I feel like I should open up to you now? Because this is not new. And I keep trying to tell people, this is not new. This has been happening.
Yeah.
Thank you. You make a really good point, Camilla. And I think it's a point of frustration for people who want to become involved. And that's the point about making donations. What else can people do to get involved? Like, you guys are both extremely busy people with very full lives, with children, with jobs. You're going to school, Camilla. How is it that you're able to do this work on top of all of that? What can regular people, I'm going to call you guys both regular people because I think that is a good thing. What can we do to be more like you?
Do you want me to speak, Ben, or do you want to go?
You go first, Camilla.
This is my favorite saying, and it might be a little harsh, but I always say, for white folks, I always say, listen with your ears open, but your mouth closed. Because you can do a lot of activism. You can donate, you can post a meme, you can say, I have Black friends. But until you are in a situation where you see racism and you experience it, there's so much more to be done. So I always say, educate yourselves, listen. When you see something on the news and it, maybe it says this person was arrested 5 years ago for petty theft or taking a coffee from Dunkin' Donuts or something, whatever it is. Or when somebody's killed and their mugshot is shown instead of a picture with their mother or their children, to not sink into what the media is trying to derail you from. I say, if there are protests going around, if you don't want to protest, maybe you just go and you watch it. Maybe you buy from Black-owned businesses. and you just begin to do that. I think it's hard. I think also white people in our state don't know what to do. And sometimes I don't even know what to tell you to do, but I just know it's going to take some humility and you're going to have to feel uncomfortable. So when you feel uncomfortable, know you're beginning, like you're getting there. And it doesn't go unnoticed. Please, it does not go unnoticed, because the white race, the Caucasian race, is the majority. So there's really not going to be a change until it's all across the board and everyone is doing it. So I say to just keep educating yourselves and to listen and to be aware.
And to build on that, Camilla, I think the opportunities for the activism or to be active in your sphere of influence, it happens publicly and privately. I think you don't have to go out of your way to protest or to write speeches or to organize marches or any of that stuff, in your public sphere. Your work, your social activity, you can be actively anti-racist. You can confront that inappropriate comment. You can confront your own, and I do it myself, biases and the things that are irrational fears. I have certain self-imposed limitations that I'm struggling to unpack, where I've unnecessarily limited myself or felt unqualified or unworthy of certain opportunities or experiences. And on the other hand, as I go through this process of trying to be more um, actively engaged in the world around me, for those who are already actively engaged in the world around them, they can look at that space in which they inhabit and see how are they working in that space. Um, are you using your voice to promote the voices of the youth, of the diverse people around you? Are you using your influence to help uplift your community, no matter if they're Black or brown? All of these things are, in a way, just regular activities that everyday folks do, but we go out of our way. Camilla, myself, Elizabeth, and probably many other people on this call who are just muted, go out of their way to try to make a positive impact in the world. And that's, I think, the message that I would like a lot of people to take away is that you don't have to be superhuman to change the world. You can do your little things in your sphere of influence. And like Camilla was saying, a lot of it comes with being that example of um, positivity, that example of the world that you want to make and create for other people. And if we open our minds to seeing the shared history, um, it will make it a lot easier for us to uplift the lives of our neighbors.
Do you have any examples of ways that regular people have stepped in and I don't know, contributed to the work you've been engaged in?
Well, with Black Lives Matter, we had a gala in October. And where we had it, the Robin Wood Center gave us or lent us their space. I've had people in the community donate cookies for that event. Sorry, I'm trying to think besides the gala where I noticed. there are a lot of places. I'm kind of stumped right now. I apologize, but there are places.
No worries.
I think that I noticed a lot with the gala, and I think that's because yeah, we had a lot of things like florists and food and stuff, and I think that Exeter, because I can only speak for Exeter because that's where I live. I think that Exeter really was moved by this. I mean, we had protesters at the town hall for like 2 weeks, just every day at the town hall. And so I think they were really willing to support and donate and try to be a part of this cause. So I did see some, yeah.
In our end of the state, a lot of our actions were right there in the public, in the common. And so it was kind of a surprise, but a pleasant surprise to watch the local businesses that face the common start to donate supplies, whether they would bring water or coffee to people who were there, whether they were putting up signs in their business windows of support. Um, there have been, just other professionals who have just professional capacities, whether they're lawyers, photographers, writers, or ministers who have shown up at our protest events and have lent their skills just to help further the message or to support those who are doing the cause that they believe in. Um, Camilla, you mentioned it earlier about some of the like professional brands, sports teams, all these big economic things that were posting Black Lives Matters, taking a knee before professional events. Um, some of that intersections of values, I think, we're getting. I'm starting to get a little ahead of myself, but I think the meat of where the diverse groups overlap, where our values intersect, those are the ways that we can align our efforts. And we don't have to be necessarily completely for a cause that we don't believe in. We can be selfish about the fact that we want good schools for our kids. Everyone wants good schools for their kids. We can be selfish about the fact that we want good education in our classroom and good teachers. We can be selfish about the fact that we want to be safe in our homes. But where our values align, we can work together across faiths, across races, across classes, any barrier, if we truly can recognize that we share those values in other people, and not just be so tribalistic.
Yeah, I agree. With this month being Black History Month, and because I've been doing so much, work with Black Lives Matter, I began trying to understand if the kids were even celebrating Black History Month. And I don't know anyone in the public schools around here, but I know my kids and they go to daycare. And, I found myself emailing my son's teacher, I think January 31st at like 8 o'clock at night saying like, so are you going to do anything for, Black History Month? Should I come in? Should I send Marcus with books? Is there anything that I can do? And to this day, the woman has still not emailed me back, which is fine. I think that I might write her a note because she writes me notes, but anyway, but what I have done is that I've sent my boys. So Target has a really great line right now for Black History Month. And I've sent my boys in, Black is Beautiful sweatshirts, and onesies and like Black Future and stuff like that. So like when she like sees the email, she'll be like, oh. But so I've been like promoting my children a positive kind of Black History Month and hoping that the school kind of catches on, because I think that it's never too early to start talking about race, because how you handle racism can be taught. So I think it's really important to start with children in Marcus's age group, which are 4 and 5, because they're so innocent, right? So I just think it's important to just remember that these brown babies are here.
I'm so glad you guys have brought up education because you're both immersed in it in on basically every level that we have access to in this country. You know, from preschool, Ben has kids in elementary school and high school. He's a high school teacher. You're in university right now, Camilla. Um, so what do you believe is the path to achieving more diversity and representation in education? Like, how do we update curriculums? How do we address systemic bias? Do your students welcome these kind of changes, Ben? Do your colleagues welcome these kind of changes? And what are we really addressing with this?
Okay, so first, things in education, a lot of my work in the last couple of months has really been this really deep dive in research in my own journey. But as like educating myself and also thinking about some of the things I've learned and how do I bring that to my classroom and how do I bring that to my teaching, one of the things that I'm really excited about discovering, and one of the narratives I think is really important that is missing in our education system, is the shared history, the shared narratives that have existed even here in New Hampshire. I was listening to a great episode on the exchange last Monday about the work that the Freedom Trail New Hampshire has been doing and discovering the grave sites and the final resting places of enslaved peoples here in New Hampshire, or former enslaved peoples here in New Hampshire. Um, the land acknowledgement that we started this conversation off with is just another example of the shared narratives, the shared histories that we've had. And our education system, unfortunately, has consistently preach one single narrative or one dominant narrative. It hasn't reflected the tapestry of the human, of the particularly the American experience that has benefited from all the diverse people's contributions. Um, and as a result, what has happened is we misrecognize or we misrepresent each other. And that just kind of fuels some of the negativity that we see going on. My students are hungry for change in curriculum. They're hungry for a different approach in teaching. Um, Granted, I work with privileged students. I'm very privileged myself to work in Waterville Valley, a lovely town. Um, and my students are from privileged backgrounds, and a lot of them have international backgrounds as well. So they come to this course hungry for something that helps to represent maybe their values as well. They've grown up in this digital age where um, they don't have necessarily the same stumbling blocks that have held us back from recognizing the humanity in each other. Um, their music, their entertainment, um, even the culture that they create is just become an amalgam of all these different sources that especially the youth find it hard or find it unconscionable to see us as adults to continue to perpetuate these kind of mistakes in the past. And so they're excited to have this opportunity to practice critical thinking in the classroom, to discover their own ability to stretch their empathy, to have discourse across boundaries and across different lines of backgrounds and experience. So I think there is definitely uh, hunger out there, and I think it's just us as adults who have that limited imagination to believe that we can predict the future that they're going to inhabit in 20 years. So I think it's only doing ourselves a disservice if we don't start emphasizing that shared history that we all have.
Thank you.
So I met with, or I hosted a youth town hall on Tuesday, and this question kind of came up. And what I took away from those students, so they were 12 and up, so it was mostly high schoolers. What I took away was that the kids really want to know more, right? They want to, learn more. They want to understand more, and not with just Black history alone. But I heard a story that evening. One student, asked their teacher if they were going to be doing anything, and the teacher pretty much told her to find a lesson plan, and she'd be the one to figure out what they're going to learn about, and she could teach the class essentially. So pretty much saying that no, he's not going to do anything, but if she wants to learn something, she can do it and teach it to the class. Something really ridiculous. So I am aware that kids want to learn more and they want to be more proactive, but I also think that teachers in New Hampshire aren't really skilled in this area. So these students are coming and they're saying I want to learn, but what are they going to teach when they don't know anything? Exeter High School alone, I think maybe now they have two, but I think they only have two faculty, and I think they both are in, like, one is a health teacher and I think the other one is a gym teacher. So I mean, we don't have Black people in the classroom really. So where do they start? Where do kids start? And where do we as a community start to try to bring this back into school? It's tough and it's hard. And I've been sitting on some meetings and trying to listen to the school board about how they're going to try to include more, but where are they pulling it from? And do they really want to hear thoughts from Black people on what we should do? So it's very interesting, and I'm just not really sure.
I know what you speaking of a little bit, and as far as that kind of divide or tension between the public school and the private school system. And my son goes to the public school, and he faces that kind of, the teachers kind of just throw up their hands, and in a way he's afraid to kind of push or mention these things because he doesn't want to be any more called out for being different than he already is, which I think is a shame. But I think on the other end, the more and more that, like, we're having these conversations at home, and we're preparing our own personal spaces for these dialogues, that they're gonna be contagious and spread. And that's my hope, at least. Even though we are a smaller percentage of New Hampshire, and historically have been, but that doesn't mean we're not here, and it doesn't mean that our stories can't be told and can't be done well. It's just a matter of effort, I think.
Speaking of, I guess, partisanship, differences of opinion, and general hostility, are these issues that you're coming up against more? And do you see the political and social divide in our country that has been referenced so often in the media recently? Do you see this showing up in education, in your classrooms, or with the youth you work with, Camilla?
Can you restate the question? Sorry.
Of course. Do you feel like the political and social sort of partisan divide that is going on in our country now, do you see that reflected in your classroom or in youth? Is it an issue in activism, that divide?
I haven't seen it just yet. Um, we are just launching our youth division. So we really just had our first town hall this past Tuesday. So I haven't seen it yet. I will not be surprised if it comes up. I think that especially because our youth division is not just for children of color, it's for everyone. And I think that there's probably some confusion and people definitely have different opinions and they don't know where to put all those thoughts. So I'm sure it will come up. I just haven't seen it just yet.
How about you, Ben?
Sure. I again, like there is a lot of division in the country, and it does show up in my classroom. But my goal is not to have everybody agree with my opinion, even though if I think you're wrong. My goal is just to have you think critically about your opinion. And in my classrooms, I try my best to model the dialogue, even if it's uncomfortable. I think it's my responsibility to create that space for the dialogue, create that space for students to um, say their opinions, even if they are wrong. But a lot of times you don't get to realize the weight of your opinion or where your values come from until you can say them out loud. And so I um I'm not afraid of the opposition or people with different opinions or even strong disagreements. And I kind of invite that dialogue because in some ways it strengthens my convictions and it gives me other ways in which I can evidence the things that I really hardcore hold on to. But it can also challenge me to think and a more encompass in a broader way so that I can help include those people who might at first think that they disagree with my positions, but will later on come around. And if it sometimes feels like it's unfair and unfortunate that I'm the one that's to provide the space for dialogue. I'm the one that's going to um, be, the one who's going to resort to discourse and to provide space for critical thinking. But I think that that's the way that we remediate the situation that we're in. And I'd love to shout down the other side, but by showing that the moral authority or the moral high ground, you can only do it one way. And unfortunately, it's the hard way. So I try to check in with my students, try to allow them to express themselves even and learn from their expressions, and not have them feel belittled by even saying something that I might vehemently disagree with.
Following up on that, um, what do you think about the word unity and the all of the national calls for people to unite? Would you say something different if you had the opportunity to choose the message that's being broadcast nationally right now? Camilla, do you want to start?
Um, um, hmm, I think I need a minute. Can
I'll
I?
go.
Yeah.
I don't really like the word unity. Personally, I'd prefer the word accountability. What is the point of uniting when the unity comes on the backs of so many other people? Um, we're hearing a lot about unity because the country's hurting, but the country's not going to heal if you just say we're together. The country can't heal without some accountability. And for so often, the peoples who have borne the brunt of accountability have borne the brunt of law and order and et cetera, look like me and Camilla. Um, this moment is called not necessarily for unity, but for people who are like ourselves, active in this work, to see that the gains that we're getting in society, the gains that we're getting in culture and recognition, that these gains aren't going to just be erased um, because there's a new administration or because it's, you know, economically feasible. Accountability stinks and I don't like it, but that's what America needs to face. These wounds have been festering for a long time and they're not going to just disappear because we're preaching unity. And as much as I I share the patriotic fervor of hopefully all of us, um, I would also like us to have a country where we can all have faith in, and not just a few of us or the majority of us, but all of us.
Um, when I think about unity, uh, I guess I'm just having trouble with this question.
You can pass if you don't like it.
Yeah, I think so. It's tough for me to kind of try to find a single sentence or a single word that describes what unity is, but I guess it's when we see not just one race come together. I guess it's when we see everyone come together, right? So we're this huge melting pot. And I think that when we're able to lean on each other and we all have the same goal, is where we begin to see unity, if that's even a valid answer.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna, we're getting close to 8:30, so I'm gonna ask kind of a bigger question to wrap up. And that is just, if you could use a metaphor for the type of work you're doing, whether you're a nonprofit or a grassroots organization like Ben's, like what what function are you working as right now? Like, are you bubblegum stuck up against the hole in the boat and then another leak is going to spring out? Like, how do you see your organization and your work and other work like this enduring in the long term? Like, is this the kind of work that is here to stay? Is this going to transform into something new and different? Are we going to change the world and make ourselves irrelevant as activists? Like, what is your vision? How do you see the future? Just like, if you are willing to talk about and share your like your dreams and visions with us to to finish up, I would really appreciate that.
Sure. I'll go first. I like metaphors. So I could kind of see our work and other social activist work. I hate to extend like the hospital stuff, but we're in a pandemic. But we're like a body's immune system. Activist groups like NH Panthers or BLM, we're specialized like white cells. And so whenever there's a virus or whatever comes into the body that is a foreign or a negative substance, there's a specialized cell that will go out and fight it that is targeted just for that work. We're in a NH Panthers, we're here to end racism. Racism, not just towards Black or brown peoples, anti-Semitism has no place in America. The racism against Asian Americans has no place in the America that I want in the future, that I'm sure most of us share. We're here on President Lincoln's birthday, and he wrote about a more perfect union. And there's probably no such thing as a perfect union, but there is such a thing as a more perfect union. And every day, activist groups like us are going to be in there doing that work to create that more perfect union. So anyway, there's my metaphor.
I was gonna be really stumped with this question. I even brought this back to the BLM team earlier today to kind of try to figure out. I'm also sorry, my little one is beginning to get a little fussy in the background, but we came up with a couple. Like pouring. It's like pouring water into a full cup, because there are so many different organizations trying to do the same work that we're doing, and you're not always sure of the impact, and it's just kind of overflowing the cup. It's also really hard to try to narrow down a metaphor for this kind of work, because you can't really compare the loss of a life and the violence that, you know, Black bodies are facing. It's almost kind of uncomparable, and I really apologize about that.
Thank you, Camilla. Do either of you have anything else you want to add, comments or questions you wish you'd heard before we wrap up?
I just want to reinforce one, my gratitude for all of you guys who are here on this call, and for Leah and the Rey Center for hosting us. But I also want to reinforce the point I made about regular folks. Me and Camilla are just people who felt like enough was enough and we had to do something. But you guys are all just normal, regular folks who all have values, who all care deeply about this country, care deeply about your neighborhoods, care deeply about your family and your friends. And you want a better future than the one that you went through. That's just kind of innate in all of our experiences as human beings. And it's Lincoln's birthday. Lincoln's second inaugural address is kind of where our abstract came from, the little quote there, that we all have something to do to make the world better. We all have a role to play, even if it is a small role. You never know how far a smile could go, especially if it's a smile that you give to someone who's not expecting to be smiled at. Especially if you know it's somebody that could use a smile at that time in their life. There's all sorts of ways that individual, regular, everyday people can lean into this work and to create space for other people to not just exist, but to prosper in America. We live in the richest country in the world, and there's no reason at all why we should have to see so many of us go through this racial animosity that's been tearing us apart for the past few months and years.
Thank you so much, Ben.
Yeah,
Well, sorry, go ahead.
no, you.
Oh, no, I was just going to thank everyone for being here. I kind of went back on the question that was asked earlier about what people can do. So I think even being on this call is a start, which again is listening and hearing. So I thank everyone and for your support.
Thank you. Thank you both so much for the work that you do, and also for taking the time to be here with us to share your personal experiences and to help shine the light on the path forward for others. If there's one thing that we're reminded of every February, it's that Black history has been scaled down, squashed, flattened, and othered into a subsection of American history. And the truth is that Black history is American history. There is no separating the two. Got it? Likely everyone on this call has seen Black Lives Matter activists or demonstrators in the streets or on the news, but now you know two Black New Hampshire activists personally. You have had a conversation and listened to them, shared space, and they've been really vulnerable with you. So thank you for sharing an intimate and more complete picture of yourselves with us tonight. We see you and we thank you for that. Thanks everyone for being here, and happy Lunar New Year. Welcome to the year of the ox.
Thank you so much. Well, Elizabeth, you did what I needed to do, which was thank Camilla and Ben so much, because it's really just an opportunity that we all can take in our daily life, and here we get to do it tonight on Zoom on Lincoln's birthday. So I really appreciate you all being here, and we're not going to take questions and answers this evening. I think that there is opportunity for us to have conversation with our friends and our family and our homes and our work, and that open dialogue is what needs to happen. So again, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
And
you.
we will not have a speaker series next week, but the following week we have Tyler Rey coming to talk about his work in the Outdoor Alliance. So I hope to see many of you then. And again, this presentation is recorded and available on the Rey Center website, and I will send it on to Ben and to Camilla and to Elizabeth as well, so you can share. Thank you all.
Thank you, guys. Bye, guys.
Have a good evening.
Good night.
Bye-bye.